Horror movies, vampires, werewolves, zombies, ghosts, mermaids? They aren't exactly the first monsters you think of when you think of killer monsters from the movies, but there's been a decent number of killer mermaid movies over the years. But I'm not going to talk about each one individually. My job here today is to find the best killer mermaid movie. This is the best horror movie, in my opinion, to feature a killer mermaid. There seems to be two types of mermaid fans these days. Your traditional mermaid fans that are very abundant. Then there's this huge rising side of people who just love to prove that mermaids were once monsters who dragged sailors to their death. We know that. I don't think the point needs to be proven anymore. We got it. But that's what we're talking about today. Now, we're not talking about movies that happen to have scenes like this. There are some good horror-like scenes with mermaids, like in the fourth Pirates of the Caribbean film. But we're talking about movies specifically that center around mermaids as the horror theme. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to technically have a mermaid, because some movies, the whole point of it is trying to figure out if the character is in fact a mermaid. But I feel like mermaids have to be present in some way. They need to be the theme of the film. Now, there were mermaid horror movies back in the day, but I feel like it's something that's kind of slowly been taking off. In the 2010s, we had quite a few mermaid horror films. Now, I'm not going to touch on every mermaid horror film ever made. I'm going to go over the ones, I've seen, or just some ones that stick out to me, and we'll try to find out which one really is the best. And since a lot have come out in recent years, let's talk about some of those first. The first one that comes to mind for me when I'm thinking of recent movies is Mermaid Lake of the Dead. This is a movie that's originally Russian, so when I saw it, it was dubbed. So obviously, I'm not going to judge it for acting, because the voice acting was abysmal in the English version I saw. It didn't come with subtitles, it was only dubbed. I remember specifically the male lead's best friend was a horrible actor. He was like, the voice actor was so bad. But this movie, unfortunately, isn't quite the mermaid movie we're looking for. Sure, it has a cool, creepy mermaid in it, but it's kind of slow, it's kind of directionless, and it's very easy to see everything coming. I feel like its biggest crime is that it's just kind of dull. We don't really get to see the mermaid that much until later in the movie. We don't get to see the environment of the mermaid that much until later in the movie. Most of the movie is you're just watching this couple's day-to-day life. And I feel like they purposely try to put the color blue everywhere, from characters' outfits to painted walls and floors and inanimate objects. Everything is just blue in this movie. And there are constant shots of water, whether it be a swimming pool or a bathtub or a sink or whatever. It's like the fact that there is so little mermaid time in this movie, they just keep shoving the color blue and water in your face to remind you that it's ocean themed. But that's actually another weird thing, is it's not ocean themed. This is a lake mermaid, so this is a little different for that. And that's where the other big problem comes in. I don't really feel like this mermaid's power set is explained. She can kind of just do anything. She's sort of a stalker slasher killer. She's sort of a mermaid. She's sort of a ghost. She spends most of the movie actually haunting the characters when they're away from her lake. So it's really unclear what she can and can't do. She can even teleport from one body of water to another. Like, she can teleport into any water. It's a movie that I think is kind of worth checking out if you like mermaid horror films, but I really don't think it's essential. I think it's just criminally mediocre, and that's its problem. So mediocre isn't what we're going for. We're going for the best, damn it. So let's keep going. What else came out? Well, have you ever heard of Killer Mermaid? No. Well, have you ever heard of Killer Mermaids? No. Have you ever heard of Nymph? No. Have you ever heard of Mamula? No. Well, they're all the same movie, and it's not a good one. Killer Mermaid is your average 2000s kind of, a bunch of unlikable, sexy people go out and party it up, and then they end up in some danger situation with some psychopath. And that's where a lot of the problems come in, is first of all, the main characters aren't likable or memorable. The plot is not memorable. The only thing that's memorable is the mermaid, but you barely see her. It's mostly just this weird fisherman guy who's the main villain for most of the movie. When we finally do see her, she transforms into something that looks like the Goombas from the Super Mario Brothers movie, and it's just such a weird effect when it happens. This is absolutely a terrible movie. This isn't mediocre like Lake of the Dead. This is just crap, and I advise you don't watch Killer Mermaid, or any title it might have when you find it. But in between those two, there's actually a pretty good movie called Mermaid Song. It's kind of a retelling of The Little Mermaid, and it's kind of a horror movie. It's not so much a horror movie in the sense of a traditional horror movie. It's more like a horror movie in the sense of human beings do horrific things in real life, and there just happens to be some mermaid stuff thrown in there. So it's honestly kind of a disturbing movie to watch. The things that the father character does to his daughters and puts them through is just disgusting. It's not really a fun horror movie, but it is actually a pretty good movie if you're in the right mood. It's definitely not a party film. You don't put this on with friends to have a good time. It's one of those aren't human beings terrible kind of movies. I'm not always in the mood to watch stuff like that, but it is pretty well done, to be honest. And you don't really get any solid mermaid action until the end of the movie. And again, it's not really presented in a horror sense so much. It's hard to say this one's a horror movie, but it's a pretty good movie. I would just say it's not on there because, we're talking about the best, man. We're talking about the best mermaid movie. We want the best mermaid horror movie that you can watch with friends. Say you have friends over and you just want to watch a crazy mermaid horror movie. Well, there's something else from recent years that isn't quite a mermaid horror movie, but it's a damn good movie. The Lighthouse. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson carry this movie the entire way through. They're the only real actors in the film. It's just about two guys going crazy working at a lighthouse all on their own. It's shot in black and white, which is always beautiful. The mermaid in this movie really isn't like the killer, though. In fact, she's not even meant to be real. She's just a metaphor for Robert Pattinson's character's pent-up sexual frustrations. And that's probably the only complaint I have with this movie. It's something that a lot of psychological horror movies do, where they're trying to create this illusion of what's real and what's not, where it kind of starts going off the deep end, no pun intended, into some weird supernatural stuff sometimes, and just as it starts to get a bit too weird, it just snaps and the character just wakes up in bed or something, or it just cuts to the next day and it never comes back to that. And I understand what they're trying to do, but I do feel like it's a little cheap and almost seems like it's trying to shock you and shake you up, but it's covering up the fact that they didn't have enough money to do the crazy supernatural stuff too much. I think it would be even more of a mind F if they showed all this weird stuff going on and it kind of just kept going in and out of reality normally. Like, maybe this stuff is happening for one of them and the other one doesn't see it, or it gets really weird, then it gradually starts to fade away and they start to come back to reality. But overall, it's a great movie. The only other thing I really didn't like was seeing that seagull die. Did we have to see the seagull die? Come on. Aside from that, it's a masterpiece, but I wouldn't really call it a mermaid movie. Definitely not a killer mermaid movie, and that's what we're looking for. So, unfortunately, Lighthouse, I gotta pass you on this one. So let's start traveling way back, because it's clear that we're not gonna find the best mermaid movie in modern times, unfortunately. Not saying there's no good ones, but it's not really what we're looking for. In the 70s, there's The Witch Who Came from the Sea, but that doesn't really qualify as a killer mermaid movie. There's a killer woman who thinks of herself as the Little Mermaid, but she's not actually a mermaid. She gets tattooed on her body, but that doesn't really count. It has a mermaid theme, kind of, but it's really just kind of a crappy, campy 70s horror movie. Oddly enough, when I looked this movie up online, it seems like most people who saw it think it's really good. It has a really high Rotten Tomatoes score and stuff, and I don't understand it. I think it's really bad. I know it tackles some serious subject matters, like about when she was growing up and things her father did to her, and that's not a laughing matter, but I just feel like the movie is so campy and horribly made and just funny because of how unintentionally bad it is, that it almost makes it a little worse that they tried to go there with that. Because it's like, no, you can't really do this kind of subject matter when your movie's this bad. All you gotta do is watch 2 seconds of the movie, and it opens with a montage of super buff dudes in Speedos just lifting weights on the beach for no reason. There's a lot of that in this movie. And the main actress's acting is so awkward and horrible. It's definitely something that's funny to watch, but it's not good. The scene in particular where she gets the mermaid tattooed on her body, it's supposed to be so dramatic, I was actually laughing the first time I saw it. And there's also a part where she starts telling the story of Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid, but she kind of just makes stuff up. Like, yeah, it's mostly right, but she kind of just says stuff that doesn't happen. She explains it wrong, but she's just explaining it like that's how the story goes. It's like, no, you didn't get read the right story. That's not how it goes. So don't watch that movie. It sucks. So we gotta look a little deeper. What else is there? There's gotta be something else. Well, there's a little movie starring a very, very young guy you might know as Dennis Hopper called Nighttide. And this might just be the gem we're looking for. The movie revolves around Dennis Hopper's character, who's a sailor who's coming to port. I don't remember if he's left the Navy or if he's just on leave, but he's staying in this port town that has a boardwalk and, just like a seaside nightlife kind of town. And he meets this mysterious girl, this beautiful woman, and he starts to get more and more interested in her, but she's super odd. Everyone kind of knows her around there, but she doesn't really talk to many people. And she just starts to say weird stuff, like she's a mermaid and she was born from the sea. And for some reason, he just keeps pressing on and talking to this really strange woman. And it turns out this woman plays a mermaid in a show on the boardwalk. Those kind of like House of Mystery attractions, like, the Mystery Shack or something. It's just a bunch of fake stuff that people are supposed to come in and ooh and ah at. It's supposed to be supernatural. Well, there's an old sailor who runs one of those on the boardwalk, and she plays the mermaid in that. And she lies in a tank of water all day in the mermaid suit. We don't see her get into it, so we don't quite know if she's actually turning into a mermaid or if that's just a fake tail she's wearing. And the movie's kind of like a film noir. It's kind of like a detective story. This guy's just kind of going around and trying to find out what he can about this girl, because it turns out also all of her ex-boyfriends are dead. And a lot of people believe that she's murdered her ex-boyfriends. So she's believed to be dangerous. So the whole movie, you are guessing with him. Is she a mermaid? Is she not? Did she kill her boyfriends? Did she not? What is going on in this movie? And it's honestly really suspenseful, really well shot. Some beautiful scenes at night with like the pools of light pouring from the lamps. It's just a very good film noir kind of atmosphere while also capturing that nice summery beach vibe. It really gives you everything you want, and I'm not going to spoil if she's actually a mermaid or not. I'm not going to spoil anything about the movie. I say you definitely should check this out because, believe it or not, I think this, Nighttide, is the best mermaid horror movie ever made. If I was going to recommend one mermaid horror movie to people to watch, it would be Nighttide. If I was going to say watch a double feature, I would say watch Nighttide and then watch The Lighthouse. That would be a good time. But Nighttide definitely takes the cake in my book. It is a damn good movie. Check it out. So I hope you've enjoyed my first installment in my, what I hope to be long-running series, The Search for the Spookiest, where I look for the best movie involving a certain monster. I know mermaids are not usually considered the most common horror monster, but that's why I wanted to do this one first, and it's Mermay, so how could I say no? So I'm going to do more of these. We'll get to everything. We'll get to aliens, and we'll get to zombies, and ghosts, and mummies, and all that good stuff. But I wanted to start with mermaids, and I think next time we're going to jump into gillmen. So
be there! Yeah.
Do all the liking and subscribing and the sharing and the bell stuff.